Good morning, Steve here. It's Saturday, March 28th, 2026. Look, the global markets, they're balanced on a knife's edge right now. And the reason for that, the real reason, isn't coming out of Washington, D.C. Now, you can forget about that noise. The story that you really need to be paying attention to is playing out right now in Germany.
You know, for decades, we all thought the German industrial machine was just invincible, right? It was the gold standard. When you saw made in Germany, that meant something. It meant quality. But today, well, that engine, the very heart of the entire European economy, it's not just sputtering, it's smoking. And believe me, that fire is threatening to spread.
So the big question is, how did Goliath fall? How did this happen? Well, it wasn't one thing. It wasn't a single event. It was a perfect storm, a truly catastrophic failure where every single pillar holding up their economic fortress just crumbled, all at the exact same time. Let's dig into exactly how this went down.
So, the foundation, it just cracked in three places, all at once. First, the cheap Russian energy that was literally the fuel for their factories. Gone, cut off. Second, their entire export-driven model. It slammed into a brick wall as their #1 customer, China, started changing its own game. And then, the killer blow came from inside. That demographic time bomb everyone talked about for years, it finally went off. You've got workers retiring in massive waves with absolutely no one to take their place. Look, any one of these things is a full-blown crisis. All three at once? That's an existential threat to the entire nation.
And you know, the most incredible irony in all of this? For years, Germany was the one lecturing the rest of Europe, wagging its finger about fiscal discipline and balanced budgets. But that very obsession, that refusal to invest, it became a straitjacket, a self-imposed prison. It stopped them from adapting, and it came damn close to suffocating their own industrial base.
So, with their backs against the wall, literally facing a complete collapse, they were forced to do the unthinkable. They had to shatter their most sacred economic rule, a rule, mind you, that was written right into their constitution. We're not just talking about a policy change here. This was a revolution in the entire German way of thinking.
And that rule, it has a name, the Schuldenbremse, the debt brake. For Germany, this wasn't just some policy. It was the bedrock of their entire economic identity. It was a national symbol of being responsible, of being prudent. Tampering with it, that was economic heresy, just unthinkable. But survival changes the rules, and they had to commit that heresy to stay alive.
And the speed at which they moved was just staggering. Think about it, March 21st of last year, just about a year ago, they officially amended the debt brake. Almost immediately after, they create this massive fund. And by January 1st of this year, the emergency cash, the subsidies, were already flowing to industry. This is a nation going from standing still to a full-on war footing, economically speaking.
So, what's the scale of this bet we're talking about? 500 billion euros. Let that sink in. 500 billion. This is not some little stimulus check. This is a national reconstruction fund, a war chest. Some critics are calling it a slush fund, but its purpose is clear. Rebuild their infrastructure from the ground up and drag themselves into a new energy reality. They finally understood a very simple truth. If you don't borrow money to fix the foundation, the whole damn house is coming down.
And this, right here, this lays out the pivot in the clearest possible terms. You had old Germany, obsessed with austerity. The goal was always a balanced budget. Always. And now, you have new Germany, operating on a single principle, survival spending. The goal isn't a balanced budget anymore. The goal is to simply have an industry left to preserve, to have an economy left standing at all.
Okay, so that 500 billion euro fund, that's the long-term plan. That's the major surgery. But to stop the patient from bleeding out on the table right now, they had to initiate 2 emergency interventions. They've essentially put their entire industrial core on life support, one measure for power and another for people.
The first life support system is something called the Industriestrompreis. Basically, since January 1st, the government has stepped in and artificially capped the price of electricity for heavy industry at just 5 cents per kilowatt hour. And why did they do this? Because the big players, we're talking Siemens, Volkswagen, BASF, they had their bags packed. They were ready to leave, to move to the US, to Texas, anywhere with cheaper energy. So this subsidy, it's a desperate measure. It's a bridge to keep their industrial jewels at home, buying them time until, hopefully, cheaper renewable energy actually becomes a reality around 2028.
But here's the thing. Cheap power doesn't mean a damn thing if you don't have people to flip the switches and run the machines. And that brings us to the second, equally terrifying crisis, the demographic cliff. To put it bluntly, the German workforce is getting old and retiring, and it's happening way too fast. They're facing a catastrophic shortage of labor.
And the numbers here, they are just brutal. Just to tread water, just to keep their factory output from collapsing, Germany needs to bring in nearly 300,000 skilled immigrants. Not just once, every single year. That is a staggering number to wrap your head around.
And this reality has given birth to what they're calling the labor bridge, especially with countries like India. And let's be very clear about this. This is not about politics or culture. This is about pure, cold, hard economic necessity. It's a survival tactic. Without a huge continuous flow of skilled workers from abroad, the German industrial engine will grind to a halt. Period.
Now, when you hear the word debt, it's easy for your mind to jump straight to the United States, and for good reason. But what's happening here is fundamentally different. The U.S. is sitting on a mountain of $39 trillion in accumulated, unfocused debt. Germany, on the other hand, is making a calculated strategic decision to take on new, highly targeted debt. It has one purpose and one purpose only: to ensure national survival and preserve its industrial base. So, this brings us to the bottom line. What does this enormous German gamble mean for us, for anyone with money in the markets? The critical question we all have to ask ourselves is, how do we play this? How do you position yourself for what comes next?
Okay, well, everyone here is watching the S&P 500 tick along at 6740. The real story, the real tell, is happening across the ocean. There are two numbers you absolutely have to watch. First, the DAX, the German stock market. That'll tell you if big money actually believes this recovery story. But the second one, and this is the most important, you have to watch the yields on German government bonds, the bonds. Those yields are the ultimate lie detector. They will tell you, in real time, if the world still trusts Germany to pay its bills.
And that brings everything down to one final critical question for every single one of us. Is Germany a massive value play, a world-class industrial giant priced for a catastrophe that might not happen? Or is it a value trap? Is it a falling knife that's going to burn every single person who tries to catch it? Everything, absolutely everything, hinges on whether this €500 billion gamble actually works. Because if it fails, the entire Eurozone loses its anchor. So watch the DAX, but more importantly, watch those bond yields. I'll see you at the open.